everyone, thank you for staying with us on episode 4 of SG Sports Uncut. In this segment, we're going to speak to our national sailors. They include 12-year-old Kenan and multiple gold medalist Colin Ng. They are also joined by the team manager Terence. Hey guys, welcome to episode 4 of SG Sports Uncut. Colin Ng, let's get this segment started about sailing. But just before we talk about the sport, let's find out what's been keeping you busy in your personal life. I mean, what do you do professionally for a career?
I'm in the broadcast industry. I do a lot of broadcast integration work,
Right.
a lot of production shoots in the media itself, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is you're in a private company?
Yeah. So I do a lot of contracts work with the various companies. Whenever there's a project, it's an ad hoc kind of thing.
Okay.
And also when there is integration work which is required by your telcos, for example,
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Is this your ideal dream job, or did you want to be something else when you were still in your secondary school days?
Well, to be honest, I mean, when we were in secondary school, my love was just for sailing, right? So you always want to basically be sailing, and the dream of basically sailing full time, as a career and things like that, was a dream.
Yeah.
But I guess with the reality of how things pan out is basically you basically find a job and you try to get it as close to your dream as possible. And in my case, I basically started work with a TV channel which basically do sports.
Yep.
So that was really good. So I started doing that and I started falling in love with media. And here I am, like 15 years later.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
It's a nice story.
Yeah.
You're also a gold medalist at the Southeast Asian Games and at the Asian Games as well.
Yeah.
Kudos to those achievements. You're now, I believe, about 41?
Yes,
41 years of age. So tell us, what was Colin Ng Wee Tai? What was he like in his secondary school days, and which school was that?
Well, I was from Bedok South Secondary School, and just like any other secondary school kid, we hang out with friends, going to movies, but the only difference is I hung out a lot with the sailing community. Anthony being one of them, who is one of my teammates since '93, and
Yeah.
he's in the picture there.
he's in the picture.
Yeah, so
Which one is it?
the one on the left.
This one.
Yes, so that's him.
This was
So-
2015 at
Yeah,
the
so
SEA Games
that's
21 gold.
2015, yeah. So we're talking about the 90s here.
Yeah.
Secondary school, right? That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, we do very much the same things like any other secondary school student, going to the movies, going out for dinners, things like that. But
Okay.
it's just the group of people you hang out with.
Nice. Talking about secondary school, we have our next guest in the form of Kenan. He's about 12 and a half years of age and believed to be the youngest athlete of the 666 that Team Singapore is sending to the SEA Games, the biggest number of athletes for a major competition. So Kenan, how does it feel to possibly, yet to be confirmed, to be the youngest athlete to be representing Singapore at the 30th Southeast Asian Games?
Well, I feel like quite proud of myself for qualifying at this age, and like I feel honored to like represent Singapore like at this age. So and I feel like it's a privilege because I know how a lot of other sailors, they've been sailing a lot longer than me, but then just unfortunately they weren't able to qualify for the SEA Games.
Yeah.
And so like it's definitely an honor to represent Singapore in the 30th SEA Games.
And looking to do everybody proud.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have your teachers and your classmates at St. Stephen's School, I mean, what have they told you or said to you about being possibly the youngest in the contingent? Or at least the youngest in the sailing squad. There's 12 of you going, so you're the youngest.
They've all been extremely supportive of me, and especially my teachers, like such as Mrs. Siu and my principals. They've all been very supportive, and like they have all wished me good luck and congratulated me for qualifying to represent Singapore in SEA Games. And like they've all wished me good luck and hope that I bring glory to our country and to our school.
That's right. We all hope that as well. So at this age, just aside from sailing, at this age, what type of music do you listen to, and do you have a favorite artist or a favorite song?
I would say my favorite artist is Alan Walker.
Alan Walker, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the song is Dark Side.
Dark Side. Do you know 2 or 3, lyrics of the song?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which one? Are you able to
Like the intro.
Yeah.
So, we're not in love, we share no stories, just something in your eyes. Don't be afraid, the shadows know me. Let's leave the world behind.
Nice. Good job. Very done. I'm sure Alan Walker will be proud with that one. Nicely done, Kenan. We now turn attention to the team manager of the Republic's sailing squad for the coming SEA Games, and his name is Terence Koh. So Terence, it wasn't easy getting the 3 of you here today for this recording on November 20th. Perhaps you can tell us why was the show tough for the sailors to commit?
Oh, I mean, the sailors are from different programs, different classes, so they have different schedules. A lot of our sailors this time around, I mean, half of it are comprised of working adults, so that's always difficult.
Right.
And some of our sailors are based overseas as well, so that's the challenge.
Okay, and I believe on the note, there was an NSC Cup Series 3 final that just took place over the last few days. I mean, how did that go?
Yeah, it concluded yesterday. I think for the sailing community, the regatta is a ranking event. And the winds were okay, it was not too bad. Kenan was there, Kenan took part and did pretty well. I think that's an understatement. I think I went out on water and saw him race as well, and it's promising.
Right. So Kenan, I heard you won the event.
Yep.
You won his class. So how do you feel about winning? Possibly this is the last event before you head off to the SEA Games. So how do you feel about it?
Like, I feel like more confident knowing that there's less more confidence in myself knowing that I've done all that I can to try to do my best in SEA Games.
Yeah.
So yeah lah.
And you're now ready to go and get the job done in the Philippines. Okay. I'm assuming besides Kenan, our other SEA Games bound sailors were not involved in this 4-day event at the National Sailing Centre at East Coast?
Actually, there were 2 others.
There were 2? Okay.
The windsurfers, they were involved, and they did well as well in their own class.
Right, nice, okay. Colin, we come back to you. Let's continue talking about the sport. You're back again to represent Singapore as you'll be with 5 other teammates competing in the mixed keelboat category. I mean, you're a veteran in the sport. Your first gold medal in the SEA Games came in 1993. Then you left the scene for 17 years. 17 years. I mean, 93, and then you competed for a few more years, and then after that you made an absence for 17 years, and you returned in 2015. I mean, you won gold. What is the motivation to still wanting to continue to train and compete now when you're just above in your early 40s?
Well, I guess for the team itself, a lot of it is the friendship which we have basically fostered over the many years we've sailed together. I mean, we've got 3 generations of sailors on the boat. The youngest being 27, and the oldest being 43. So the average age is about 37, and it's just the love of the sport and being able to do it with a bunch of friends, which you get along with. So it's not you're not put in a pressure cooker and it's like, you need to sail and you need to compete and things like that. I mean, racing sailboats is in our blood, and we basically put it together in a team, and we basically okay, let's do it, and we put our minds to it, and here we are.
Okay. What is the main difference between your usual style of competing with 2 teammates in a keelboat as opposed to now 6 people in one boat in the event in the Philippines?
Right. So in 2015, we were sailing a 3-man boat versus in 2019 it's a 6-man, or it's basically limited by a weight limit.
Right.
So we're sailing with 6 people. 5 guys and 1 girl, and the principles of it is very similar. Teamwork is involved, and instead of you working with 2 other teammates, you're working with 5 others. This is where that friendship comes into play. You understand each other.
The team dynamics
yes,
as well.
Yes, so it's just trying to understand each other is a hurdle already. And over the years, we've either sailed against each other, we sailed together on the same team. So there is some sort of understanding, going to these games.
Okay. Yeah. Kenan, we come back to you. You'll be competing in the single-handed Optimist Class Open category. Will this be your first time competing in the Philippines?
Yeah, this will be my first time competing in Philippines at the Subic Bay.
In Subic Bay, yeah. What have you heard about the sea conditions over at Subic, which is the competition venue? I believe it's about a 2 or 3 hour flight from Manila. What have you heard about the conditions over there?
So I just returned last Thursday from a 7-day training camp in Philippines at Subic Bay. So, the conditions were strong, medium winds and the conditions were the wind direction were all shifty cause of all the mountains and hills, and so it was challenging to predict where the wind would change to, and to try to connect all those dots together to try to get first to the mark.
Right. So it's 7 days you were there.
Yeah.
Okay. Terence, could you break it down for us in terms of how many classes or categories will our team of 12 be competing in?
I will be competing in 8 events, and they are the two Optimist classes, 2 windsurfing classes, 2 laser classes, and then the 2 Q-boat events.
Yeah.
Okay, 8 classes. We know that 4 years ago, when Singapore hosted the SEA Games, we won 10 gold medals in sailing alone. Then, just 2 years ago in KL for the next games, we won 4. So, firstly, could you recount for us as to what was the main reason behind that drop from 10 gold to 4?
Yeah, I think in 2015 we had 20 events going on, so that's a massive difference from the other SEA Games that we had, and hence the number increased. On top of it, you count it as a home game, so home advantage. I think that's the big reason why we have a difference in medal tally.
From 10 to 4. Okay. Now in 2019, what was the mindset of Singapore Sailing in selecting the current squad for the games in 2 weeks? In other words, how did the NSA decide which event to compete in Subic?
Mainly, we follow our Olympic format and our pathway, so it's been set. Our bigger target is the Olympics, and we flow backwards from there.
Right.
And these are the classes that are in the pathway towards the Olympics.
So the 8 events that you mentioned, is that all 8? Are there other events that we are not competing in Subic?
Yeah, there are a couple. I think the 420 event is one, the 470 women's event is one, and then there's one windsurfing event as well.
Okay. Kenan, let's take you back about 6 months ago in terms of your preparations for the SEA Games. I'm referring to the National Sailing Championships in June, whereby you competed in the Optimist class. I believe you finished in 6th place overall, right? How would you describe that performance in June?
In June, I wasn't as experienced as I was now, because from June until now, I've gone to many overseas trips and gained a lot of experience. And so now I'm more experienced and more ready to challenge whoever comes to Singapore or wherever I go.
Okay.
And now in June, I believe that ankle growing pain in my ankle.
Oh.
So I did worse than I expected lah.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, because you said you traveled for quite a bit, so then what about your homework and all that? Is somebody, a classmate, helping you?
So usually before I go, I'll tell my teachers, and they'll usually allow me to go lah. So, but before I leave, the day before I leave, I ask the teachers for what chapters they're going to go through while I'm gone, and I collect all the work. Then, so for example, for Worlds, I was gone for about 3 weeks,
Right.
and during that 3 weeks, before that, in before the June holidays, I got all the homework that I needed through,
Yeah.
and like I tried to complete it when I was free in Antigua.
Nice. Which was the follow-up question. So you traveled to Antigua to compete in the Optimist World Champs.
Yep.
You finished in about, I think, 57th position. So
Yep.
your thoughts on competing at the World Champs?
The World Champs was like my first World Champs in like my whole life lah. So
Yeah.
like I wasn't as like the winds were like the wind average was like 18 to 20 knots and gusting 27 knots, and like I wasn't really that fit in mid-July, and but now I believe that I'm fitter, and like if I go to a strong wind event, I believe that I can do better.
Nice. We'll come back to you in a minute. Colin, perhaps you can tell us as to how our Singaporean sailors over the last 15-20 years are able to compete at the highest levels of sailing and come out as world champions at a very young age.
Well, looking at Kenan as an example, I mean, he's sailing in a category which you are allowed to sail till you're 15, and he basically qualified when he's 12. So it basically shows that this Olympic pathway program which Singapore Sailing's got, it's the right way forward. And we're basically nurturing this pool of sailors in the direction which we are hoping they would.
Okay. And in terms of the parents, I mean, how does one even introduce the sport to the child and allowing him or her to get accustomed to competing in the sea and also competing alone in some of the competition categories? Because I believe I interviewed a national sailor 2 or 3 years ago on another show, and she almost quit the sport because of a terrifying experience that she had. I think because the sea, the conditions were bad, and she almost drowned and all that, but she still overcame the fear and continued to train. So how does a parent get to even introduce the sport?
Well, I guess for me itself, my belief is not to basically force the child into the sport. Let them enjoy the different sports, let them be exposed to the different sports, and then hopefully as a role model with the sport, I've been sailing and I've been representing Singapore for so many years. They want to follow in their footsteps. And I find that if you basically put too much pressure on a kid, chances are they will lose interest earlier than expected.
Okay. Kenan, at which age did you start sailing and why?
I started sailing at the age of 6
Okay.
at a Kids Afloat program
Right.
organized by SFYC Yacht Club. So
Okay.
I started because my father actually started to sail when he was younger. So he introduced it to my siblings, and so when it was my turn, so I just tried it and I instantly took a liking to the sea.
Nice. So you would say you were inspired by your father to take up the sport of sailing?
Yeah, and I had a lot of, cause my siblings also sail, so they had a lot of spars or equipment to pass down to me.
Right. Your siblings, they got to represent Singapore?
No.
So you're the youngest. You're the youngest in the family?
Yeah.
And you are representing the country.
Yeah.
I'm sure your father must be, we got at least one. Terence, as the high performance manager at Singapore Sailing, and based on what you just heard from Colin and Kenan, is there anything that you'd like to add in terms of why it is important to get your child started at sailing at a very young age? I mean, he started at 6.
Yeah. I think it's important to be exposed at a young age, but not necessarily specialize in the sport. I think there's a lot of evidence to say that early specialization, especially in sailing, it's not really beneficial or not necessary. But for us, I think even in our programs, we tell our coaches for junior programs, let them do a lot of other activities that enhance motor skills and development.
Yeah. So, in the follow-up question to skills, I mean, what sort of life skills do the sailors tend to learn over the years in the sport?
I think sailing is such a unique sport. you're competing out there, you don't speak with anybody else other than perhaps your teammates on the boat.
Yeah.
You have to problem solve quite a bit in sailing. You have to be independent, especially the Olympic campaigners. They are overseas most of the time, spend campaigning in Europe, campaigning in Asia. So you have to be quite independent in that respect.
Especially if you're competing as an individual.
Oh yeah.
The
definitely.
decisions are yours and yours
Yeah.
alone to make. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Kenan, we come back to you and let's talk about the NSC Cup Series 2, which took place in September. This time round, you won the gold medal in the Optimist class. How would you describe your strategy for this event, the NSC Cup Series 2, which took place in Singapore?
Strategy during that competition was just to like try to be more consistent and like just try to maintain my position throughout the regatta. And so on the first day, I think I was top 3, and I just tried to like get top 10 for the rest of the races and like slowly catch up.
So that means on the first day you were already in the top 3, and so that sort of set your vision that you know you can, as long as you maintain, you could go on to win it.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Terence, were you surprised to see 12-year-old Kenan clinch the gold medal in September?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised. As the high performance manager, firstly, I don't look at one sailor. I look at the development of all sailors. But like I said, it's not a surprise because Kenan has been developing well in training. The coach's feedback is we've been doing the right things, checking off the right boxes. So it's all a culmination of his effort as a sailor in preparing for the games.
Okay. Colin, with a full-time career in hand, how many chances did you get to compete in international events this year?
Well, we didn't do any races in this class this year.
Yeah.
Because with this class of boat, there is very limited races around the world. Because not many countries own them.
The 6-person keel boat.
Yes.
Yeah.
This class of boat, this particular model of boat.
Okay.
So we had to we got to strategize how we actually choose our races. So there's two parts to the racing. There's one which is the match racing, and then there is fleet racing, and the tactics are very different. So we basically plan our races based on these two elements. One of the events which we did was the match racing event, the DVS Cup in May. Yeah. So with that itself, that checked the box for the match racing to get us in tune with the match racing tactics, get the team together, and basically that's a stepping stone for us. And then later on, the other races like the Western Circuit and things like that was more for the fleet racing component of our training.
The Western Circuit regatta took place in August at Raffles Marina.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. I think you mentioned this just now. You're about 41, and your 5 other teammates in the mixed keelboat class for the SEA Games are in their.
Well, it's 3 generations of sailors, right? So there's 3 of us in our 40s, and there's 2 of us in the 30s, and then there's one which is in about 20. She's 27. Daniela, she's 27, and she basically brings the average down. Yeah. So the average age on the boat is 37.
Yeah, I don't think we've really ever heard 3 generations in one boat.
Yeah. So so I mean the sailing community is really tight, and we talk we race against each other. We come back to shore, and we do hang out and we talk on the happenings of the race, and that's how each of us learn.
Okay, nice. Coming back to Kenan, you competed in one last event. There was or 2 last events. I mean, you just finished over the weekend in Singapore. So your last international event overseas was in Abu Dhabi. The regatta. You finished 3rd in the Optimist class. Can you tell us about the experience in Abu Dhabi and how you managed to win the bronze medal?
So in Abu Dhabi, like the course it was actually in the bay, but during practice we actually had it outside the bay lah. So I wasn't really used to conditions inside the bay. So like surprisingly, I actually after the first day I was 3rd. Like the course inside the bay was like short, the current was sort of strong. And so it was like difficult to get to mark 1 in a good position lah. So you had to try to catch up during the downwind or the reach. So during the second day, I knew that I was third and that all I needed to do was maintain my position or try to get better. So during the second day, all I needed to do was just try to get as best as I can. So for the first race of the day, I got, believe, second. And then for the second race, I got second also.
Nice.
So
Okay.
like at the end of the day, I was just happy that I managed to like do well for the country and for our team lah.
Outstanding. And now with just about 2 weeks to go to the SEA Games, you are leaving for the Philippines this Friday, November 22nd. So you probably have about, I think about 10 days that you'll be there before your program over there starts. So what will you be working on?
I think our coach will make us work on our boat speed or like our boat handling, especially cause it's expected to be strong wind in Subic Bay during that time. So he'll probably launch us in the afternoon where it's stronger winds. So we'll probably practice on our boat speed, boat handling, like our tacking, our jibing.
So, and how many hours of training is that?
In the morning, while we were in the training camp in Philippines, we woke up at about 6 a.m. to go for gym.
Okay.
And then after that, we headed for the club at about 9:30 after we had breakfast in our rooms. So then after that, our team manager went to the mall and got us lunch. So at about 12 to 1 o'clock, we launched and stayed on water until about 4 to 5.
It's almost 8-9 hours.
Yeah.
In total. Wow. Terence, over the years we've seen our national youth sailors take time off, like 6 months or even 1 year to train for major games. What is your stand when these young athletes put their studies on hold in order to train, chase a dream, represent the country?
I think it shows great commitment from these sailors. It's something to be admired about. But we also are aware that it's a long game. You don't medal at the Olympics until you're late 20s, late 30s even. So we're careful and mindful that they have other things to consider like career as well. And the sooner they can get that out of their way and finish their studies, then they can concentrate on sailing as well.
Okay. I understand it's not always about training and competing at Singapore Sailing, which is the National Sports Association. Just 2 months ago, Singapore Sailing conducted an Athletes Give Back initiative. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
The Athlete Give Back, we actually hand it over to the athletes to organize. And it's a wonderful initiative. The athletes choose their beneficiaries and they communicate with that. And it's all arranged by the athletes or the sailors in this case. So it was nice to see that our sailors are giving back after being through our system. I mean, the country has basically given them the opportunity to sail at a high level, and it's nice to see them give back.
Okay. Could you also touch on Singapore Sailing's former president, Dr. Ben Tan, who was at the helm since the start of this decade, since 2010, and he stepped down in June 2018. He's now an advisor with the NSA. He's also been chosen as the chef de mission for Team Singapore at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. How significant is that for the sailing community here, for him to be the CDM?
I think we're immensely proud of his achievement as a sailing community. I think ever since he was a sailor all the way up to now, he's contributed so much to the sport, and we feel very lucky to have him on board now as an advisor. I think he's continuing with his plans that he set many years ago, and for him to be a CDM, I think not just for sailing, for Singapore sports, the way he carries himself is really good for the nation.
Colin, you know Dr. Ben extremely well. Over the years, how much did Singapore Sailing benefit under his leadership as the president for practically this entire decade?
I think it's a mentor thing with Ben. I sailed on the same team with him since '93,
Right.
93 and 95 in the SEA Games, and he's always been a big brother to me. since those days. And him getting on board in 2010, that was my Asian Games, the Asian Games here in China, and his leadership has just been amazing, because it's somebody who has been there and he's done that, so he's got the experience leading people, especially in the sailing scene. So that's really good.
Okay. All right then. We've finally talked. Let's finally talk about the objectives at the coming SEA Games, and what would you be contented with in your mixed keelboat category, Colin?
The team itself will be extremely contented if whatever we have put into training, we can replicate it during the racing. All the maneuvers which we have trained for, all the moves which we have practiced in the recent trip to China for 8 days, if we can replicate that at the games, we'll be more than happy.
And which country would you be looking out for that will be posing a major threat?
I guess all the countries will be strong in all the classes.
Yeah.
But obviously the Filipinos, host country, host nation, they're going to be strong as well. So I think it's just watching out for everybody and not being complacent.
Yeah, and hoping for the best for the weather, weather conditions.
Yeah, I guess you can't really control that, so
Yeah.
we can be just basically focused on what we can control as a team, and basically just replicate what we have done in training.
Kenan, it's your first outing at the Southeast Asian Games. What are you hoping to achieve?
I'm just hoping for a podium finish, cause I'm not really expecting much for first SEA Games, because I know that there are many other experienced sailors, more experienced sailors than me, where they have travelled over the world much more times than me. So I'm just hoping for a podium finish and to do our country proud.
Okay, nice. Team manager, Terence 8 classes, our 12-member squad will be competing in Subic. What is the magic number which your NSA is quietly hoping to achieve?
So 8 events.
8 events.
9 gold medals. No, we don't put a medal count to what we try to do. Like Colin said, our focus is getting the processes right. What we can control, we do it well, and that's the message I tell the sailors all the time at the games. Make sure your routine is checked off. Make sure the equipment, you've checked it through, and those things that you can control are basically what your focus should be.
Okay. With that, we've come almost to the end of this discussion on the sport of sailing, but in tradition with the show, just before we go, I believe the two of you, the athletes, you brought something significant or meaningful to you. Perhaps we'll start with Kenan. What have you brought to show us?
So I actually brought my watch, and this watch is actually quite important to me because
This camera. Okay.
because I actually got this about 2 months ago because I lost my previous watch, and cause without this watch, stats would be pretty bad, and I wouldn't be able to keep track of time or what day it is. It's quite important to me .
So who bought the watch for you?
My mom.
Your mom. Okay. All right. Colin, what about yourself?
Well, mine isn't really a physical thing, but it's basically a picture of the team from '93 with
okay.
Anthony, and I think you're gonna see it later on.
Yeah.
So in the picture, we've been talking about Dr. Ben. He's in the picture as well, and the team of '93. So that was my first games, second games for Anthony, and it's our first gold medal together.
The SEA Games '93 was in Singapore.
So that was a home game.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was very sentimental.
And you still, of course, you treasure it up to today. That's
Yeah.
almost coming to about 30 years. Almost.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
But who's counting, right?
Yeah,
So-
exactly. Okay, on that note, thank you very much, Terence Colin, Kenan, all the very best. On behalf of everyone, we wish the entire sailing team the very best. The sailors have constantly delivered at every major games, and hopefully, that track record will continue with in Subic as well. So all the best, Colin and Kenan
Thanks,
and
Raj.
Terence.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you. Thanks for having us.
And you just heard from our national sailors as well as our table tennis athletes. We wish all of them the very best at the coming Southeast Asian Games. Bye for now.